In a limestone shelter on South Africa's western Cape Coast, a team of archaeologists spent years sorting through 270 fragments of ostrich eggshell, each one scratched with the same cross-hatched pattern repeated by different hands across thousands of years. The fragments dated back roughly 60,000 years. They weren't jewelry, they weren't tools, they were canteens, not decoration. A claim. For most of human history, running out of water wasn't a minor inconvenience solved by walking to a tap. It was the single force that decided where people could live, how long a settlement could survive, and whether a civilization would still be standing in 100 years. Those eggshell fragments came from Diepkloof Rock Shelter. And in 2010, a research team led by archaeologist Pierre-Jean Texier published the analysis in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. The engravings weren't random. They followed a repeating hatched band motif, refined and repeated across generations, on objects used daily to store the one resource that could kill a person in 3 days without it. Texier's team argued the marks functioned like a signature, a way of identifying whose water was whose, in a landscape where a sealed eggshell buried in the wrong place could mean the difference between finishing a hunt and not finishing it. That same landscape is still home to San communities today, and 20th century ethnographers documented the exact same instinct playing out in real time. Generations later, San foragers dig what are called sip wells, a hole packed with soft grass, water drawn up through a hollow reed until it bubbles to the surface, and they bury sealed ostrich eggs of water at specific points scattered miles apart along their hunting routes. Points that are memorized, not marked, revisited months later by people who never wrote any of it down. So, how does a civilization get built on top of that kind of scarcity? The honest answer is, not everywhere it was tried. In the high desert of what's now northwestern New Mexico, the ancestral Puebloans built Chaco Canyon into the center of a trade and ceremonial network that pulled people and goods from across the American Southwest. Pueblo Bonito alone held roughly 800 rooms, stacked 4 and 5 stories high, sustained by maize and timber hauled in from dozens of kilometers away, and by a domestic water supply drawn from a handful of seeps and springs in the side canyons. None of that scales indefinitely. Dendrochronology, tree ring dating, was founded in the early 20th century by the astronomer A.E. Douglas, and it let researchers date the timber in Pueblo Bonito's walls to the exact year each beam was cut. Decades later, USCA's hydrologist Larry Benson Cross referenced those same tree rings against regional soil moisture reconstructions and found the pattern hiding in plain sight. Construction in the canyon peaked, and then, beginning around 1130 C. A 50-year drought settled over the region. Within a few generations, a canyon that had drawn pilgrims from hundreds of kilometers away stood largely empty. But here's the part that doesn't fit the obvious story. Thirst didn't only end civilizations. On the other side of the planet, it built one that's still delivering water today. Around the 7th to 5th centuries BC, engineers of the Achaemenid Empire, working in a dry mountain basin near what's now the town of Gonabad in northeastern Iran, began digging a tunnel system that would eventually stretch more than 33 kilometers underground. 427 vertical shafts connected to a single, gently sloping channel, calculated precisely enough that groundwater could travel downhill by gravity alone. No pumps, no seepage, nothing lost to evaporation along the way. No engine has ever moved it. None has needed to. In 2016, UNESCO listed the Qanat of Gonabad as a World Heritage Site, one of 11 such networks recognized across Iran, technology old enough to predate the Roman aqueduct. And it's still doing its original job. It's not that Persian engineers simply outbuilt the people of Chaco Canyon. Historians studying Persian water law have found that qanat communities also developed water clocks, floating bowls with a small hole drilled through the bottom, built specifically to divide a shared channel's flow fairly among households. So no family upstream could quietly take more than its cut. Nobody has fully resolved why one desert society built an 11-site engineering network that's still running, and another walked away from an 800-room city after 100 years. Climate reconstructions can only say so much about decisions made 1,000 years ago. But the pattern holds up strangely well. When scarcity arrives slowly enough to plan around, it seems to force cooperation into existence instead of collapse. Zoom forward to January 2018. Cape Town, South Africa, came within months of becoming the first major modern city to run its taps dry entirely, a threshold officials nicknamed Day Zero. The plan, if it hit, shut off the pipes to most homes and send 4 million residents to line up at one of 200 communal collection points around the city, rationed to 25 liters per person per day. The bottled water aisles emptied faster than the reservoirs did, same hoarding instinct that buried an ostrich egg 60,000 years ago, just with worse aim and a shopping cart. The city held on. Day zero never technically arrived, pushed back through steep restrictions and eventually rain, but for the better part of a year, millions of people in one of the world's modern metropolitan centers were living by rules a Kalahari forager would have recognized on sight, know exactly where the water is, guard it carefully, and never assume it'll still be there next season. Two people, 60,000 years apart, solving the exact same equation. One scratching a claim into an eggshell buried in sand, the other standing in a line with a jerry can and a ration number. Neither one thinking of it as